Did you start? We're here this morning in Umatilla, Florida. I'm with Jim Bung, and we're going to talk about Jim's experience in the service. So, Jim, can you tell me what were the dates of your service, what branch you were in?
I was drafted by the United States Army in 1966 through the late part of 1967. I spent my basic training in Fort Polk and leadership program in Fort Polk, and AIT training and some other training in Fort Polk, Louisiana.
AIT, Jim, is?
Advanced Infantry Training.
Okay. So once you got done with training, then where'd you go?
Oh, after training, right there we were sent home for a while, and then we were assigned to go to Vietnam.
Okay. When you went, can you tell me a little bit about waiting to go overseas? And
Yeah, it was a different experience. During that time, in I think it was '66. I can put a date to it. It's been a while back, but the planes were on strike, so we had to take trains out to California. And I'm from Illinois originally, and there was probably 80% of the people that were on the trains were GIs, and it was quite an experience from Illinois to California, because we knew where we were going, the majority of them, and so it was a party from the moment you stepped on until you got off. Okay, getting there, we went out of Oakland and that, and it was different. We knew some of the people that we had served with and we were training with, and it was different. So a lot of them were a lot more boisterous, a lot of them were more opinionated, and a lot of them were a little bit tough on the outside, but when they knew where they were going, a lot of them retracted back into being quiet and reserved and concerned about, their responsibility from that point on.
once you left Oakland, you went straight to Vietnam? They fly you over?
Right. Well, they flew us and they dropped us for a minute in Hawaii, then Guam and Wade, and then we finally ended up coming through Saigon, and then they shipped us up to, I was with the 1st Cavalry outfit in An Khe, which is in central Vietnam.
What were things like when you first got there, Jim? What was, first day?
Everything that they told you in trying to prepare you just kind of washed away, because when you walked off the plane, you experienced all of what you do. No way could they teach it. The people looked different, the people acted different, the country was different than what you expected. It was an emotional switch right away, concern right away. You go into this survival mode, and you start looking out for yourself, and wondering what your next step is. And of course, sitting there, waiting for orders to be cut and stuff like that, and where you're going is a little bit of an experience the way it is. A lot of pressure on young men.
What were wherever you got to, Jim, that first place you were stationed there in country, did that continue to be kind of the base camp you operated out of? Or?
Well, after I got assigned to the 2nd and 5th, then I was sent to the 2nd and 5th. And in those days, our living facilities were all tents, okay? Dirt floors, tents, and so we worked out of that, and your mess halls were attached to your company and that, and you had your companies lined out. With the Cav, it was one of the biggest outfits over there, and we basically fought out of helicopters. We make our air assaults out of helicopters and stuff like that. In the beginning, it was taking you out and familiarizing with the area you're in, giving you just a brief idea what you're going to be contacting out there, getting a feel about what the people were like and stuff like that.
How were you accepted into the group? Was there, you're part of the team? I mean, how did?
Well, it's kind of like a development center. You go in and one person will automatically you have old timers, people that's been there before, people that's been baptized under, you know, in a combat situation. They, being through what they've been through, they accept you, you know, willingly. You have to feel your way through. You know, if you ask questions, in fact, the old timers will tell you what to do and where to go and stuff like that, because, you know, it's going to benefit them, and not only yourself but them.
When you mentioned, Jim, living in tents and that, what about food and drink and, you know?
Food at our base camp, which we've never seen very often, were, you know, just the mess hall put it together. And GIs can adapt to anything, okay? And our food over there was adequate. It was fine. We never gave it a second thought. We were just more concerned about, you know, getting on what our jobs were going to be. When we were in the field, I spent probably 10.5 months back and forth in the field, and we just ate sea rations. And that's, you know, and once in a while they take us and give us a rest area, maybe on the China Sea or another LZ or something like that, and they would bring in hot rations then, okay?
So pretty much it was...
Yeah, sea rations. We spent majority of our time in the field. A combat soldier will spend, I would imagine, 90% of my time in the field, in the jungle.
So, Jim, talked about in the field.
Well, looking for different experience without going too far. This is a little bit tough, so I'm going to try to hit on it briefly about the stuff that I can still talk about. There's some situations that come up that are kind of funny that some GIs that come back will talk about and stuff like that. With the 1st Cav Division, we had a green line, which was a security line around the camp. And you would be brought back after combat, given some, you know, in some rest time and stuff like that, and you would lay back and they'd bring you hot food and other things, cigarettes, and, you know. And there would be occasions where they would bring the new troops over and they would send them out to familiarize them, and people would get lost out there, and that was kind of a funny situation. You hear them talking on the radio, and the GIs would come back and would, you know, half their helmets, and you know, some would lose their weapons and stuff like this, being so, you know, trying to get themselves together, scared. It was the bottom line, was scared. And when you've been out in the jungle and that, you see that it was kind of funny. I know what you want, and I'm trying to get there, okay? And a couple situations. I'll give you a little example. We got called back and we were sitting on an LZ. We just got through with a couple of days of a firefight with some North Vietnamese. Lost a lot of troops, came back to give us a break, and we just happened to be watching and helicopters taking off. And over there, you know, everybody's a wild man. Everybody does their own thing, and these helicopters were just kind of racing, and once we see one crash into a mountain. So being there a while, we all knew what our jobs were, okay? So we got the orders. Orders were to pack up and move out. We were going to go back and see if there's any survivors and see what we could do over there. Well, within a half an hour, we had, you know, another 10 choppers up in the air, and we were going over to check the situation out. Got over there, came down, and we went in there, and it developed into a real bad situation, okay? And so we pulled back, lost a lot of troops, because we weren't looking for that. There was no information of any enemy in the area. So we lost quite a bit, got pulled back, and we had to move. They moved us that night into another area, and to experience something that you never could imagine. Like, it was, we worked with a plane outfit called Puff the Magic Dragon, and Puff would lay down a line of bullets, cover a whole football field within seconds, and every other tracer round you could see it happening at night. And so everybody knew what they were going into. We might have to repel in there. We might have to go in for bring out survivors if there is any, or bring out the dead. Another situation, we were called in to take care of the 7th. The 7th got beat up pretty bad, and we were asked to go in and support them and catch up to them, and they were pinned down on a mountain, so we tried to get to them. It took us, I think, about 12 hours to get up to them. And when we got there, they were just all spread out. The ones that were left were spread out and waiting for us. And they had probably been into combat fighting probably for 6 to 8 hours. And when we got there, we were emotionally and physically drained. So our job was to let them rest, go to sleep, and you know, feed them, take care of them, and get them back on their feet a little bit. Those are some of the things that you experience over there.
Did you have, Jim, much contact with the people, the Vietnamese people?
At different times, okay? Of course, when you're moving through different areas, you have different, people are different in different areas. I remember moving through a jungle area, real thick jungle areas, you run into mountain yard people. We're very friendly. These type of people were very friendly to the Americans. They didn't like the North Vietnamese. And we would have contact with other South Vietnamese and other ones. They would be selling products to the GIs. They would be, we would try to get some information out of them about, you know, what was in the area and stuff like that. Not too cooperative, because they had to take care of themselves. They were concerned about their own self with the North.
Were there any points at the time that you were in there where you took on prisoners and had to deal with that whole side of life?
Yes, many times. A lot of our times they might send out a WERP outfit, a recon outfit, and the purpose was to go out. They might bring you in after, they would bring you into an area. One of the tactics were to bring you into an area where they were bringing troops out, where they just had some combat. And when they would bring choppers in to pick up the ones, different WERP outfits, people that's going to go for prisoners would drift out when the other prisoners, the other GIs would come in, and they would go into the jungle and wait, set up, and they knew where they were going to set up. After usually a battle, and when the Americans would move out, some of the leftover enemy would come back in to pick up maybe helmets, maybe some weapons laying around. The GIs forgot or just got so emotionally tired, they just left things behind. Maybe sea rations, whatever they could, you know, scarf up, they would come back and get. And that was a good way to pick up a prisoner or two. And then if you did, you'd bring them back to camp, and there was a set amount of procedures to go through. Now, to get the man from point A to point B, it might be very difficult on a man, because GIs build up this resentment, this hate for the enemy and stuff like that. Treatment of the prisoners were fine, majority of the times, but there was some times that, you know, you would go over the edge with them.
Yeah. In the time that you were in Vietnam, a couple things. One is, did your rank increase at all, Jim?
Yeah, it would go up with the time you were over there. Would go up with the different actions you were in and stuff like that. Men that were in combat weren't really concerned about rank. Your main purpose over there was to get the job done, get back home, get back to your families, your jobs, or whatever, okay? Wasn't concerned too much about rank. If you were a lifer and I think you were going to spend the rest of the time, then you would be concerned about that.
What about R&R, Jim? Rest breaks?
Yeah, right.
Did that happen at all? Or?
Yeah, many times. If you're over there, I spent 10.5 months in Vietnam. So during that time, after 6 months, you usually get a break. And maybe in country, out of country. If you're in the country, they'd send you to maybe Thailand or someplace like that. Out of country with the Philippines, Hawaii, Australia, and some other places like, I don't know. I ended up going, what came up for me was the Philippines. 6 days in the Philippines was 6 days that you don't remember too well because of the alcohol and the ladies involved and stuff like that. Some of the things you want to put behind.
When you were back in country, was there, were you able to stay in touch with your family at all?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We were telling a story the other day. I had a younger brother, he's 4 years younger than I am. Well, when I went over there, I gave him my car. And I told him, I said, I don't know if I'm coming back. And so use my car until I come back, and I'd like to have some wheels when I got home. But it's, you know, go out and have fun. So when I was over there, we would get letters from home, and, you know, and GIs are not known for writing too many letters. We wrote a couple, mainly when we needed something, money or whatever.
Yeah.
And I got a letter from my brother, and the first letter was, sorry about this, and it was a picture of my car being crunched up on one side. A couple months later, I got a picture, and the other side was bagged up. So a month later, I got another picture, and he's got a picture of my my car being pulled out of the water in a frozen lake. And so those are the little bitty thoughts about your family, how you still make a connection with them.
It sounds like when you were in Vietnam, you really did have a group that you worked closely with as a team.
Yes. Companies broke down to platoons and squads and that, and you form a little family. The feelings are you don't want to get too close, but there's no way you can't get too close. You have to work with these individuals. You share their lives. You share some of you have to, you know, day and night you start talking about, you know, automatically you start talking about your girlfriends, your friends, what you did, sports, what you did at home, what you plan on doing at home, what kind of car you want when you get back home, and all these kind of stuff. So it becomes a family, yes. It becomes a brotherhood. I speak to two of the young men that I served over there with, and two of them that I went to AIT in basic and leadership school. And we don't talk much. The one that shared the experience I did in the field is Johnny Cole up in Vermont, and we spoke one time out of 30-some years. He came down to see me, and we spent 1 hour talking about what happened after I was hit, what he experienced, what I experienced. And we haven't spoke about the issue after. It's not comfortable. A man that's been in combat won't sit around and tell stories. A man that's been in combat and he wants to put it behind him, he wants to get on with his life, and he doesn't want to bring it up again, because I spent probably a good deal of my life trying to rehabilitate myself back into society. It wasn't just a quick turnover. I spent, until I met my wife, I would, and it sounds really far out, but it's the truth. I built a home, I took care of my family, I would sleep with a light on and a 357 next to the bed, and I didn't care a whole bunch about a lot of things. And when my family came along and the responsibility with my child and my wife and stuff like that, things changed. And that was the best therapy for me.
Jim, did you, because I want to come back to talking about after the service, but when you were in Vietnam, did you receive any medals or awards or citations?
Well, too often when I got back, usually it doesn't happen in a combat situation. Not that I experienced, none of the troops that we were in. Okay, when we got back, I can only talk as one that came back and was injured. And I received mine in the VA hospital, I received mine in the Naval Base Hospital. I was with the Army, but I was sent back. After I was injured, I'll talk a little bit about that. When I was injured in 10.5 months in Vietnam. We were taking, and we came into an area and we were trying to get some troops out of there that was in there for 2 days, and they were banged up pretty bad. So we went ahead and we got caught. We lost a platoon right away. We lost 30 men within minutes. And so within 6 to 8 hours after I was in there, we were pinned down, and we spent, I think 3 hours trying to fight ourselves out of a bad situation. We did. We was able to retract, back up, get back into another position which was to advantage to us. We spent another 4 or 5 hours the rest of the night just trying to take care of ourselves there. I think there was about 7 of us left. When we went in there, we probably had 20. And the next morning, our job was to police up and to get the wounded out if there was any left, and then carry the dead out. And we had to cut an LZ into a jungle area where we could bring one chopper at a time. Of course, the survivors, the wounded went out first, and then the dead went out, and then we came out. Would you shut that off for a minute?
Jim, we were, remember where we were? We were talking.
Nope.
This was just before that situation where you were injured.
Oh.
And
Do you want to run with after I got injured and follow through it?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you?
Well, after I was injured in an area called Bong Son, okay, and we were helicoptered out. Go back a step. When I was injured, we were carrying the dead out, okay, and we had just taken a bunch of wounded out, and we went ahead and we had a 1 chopper LZ cut in the jungle. So my job with my boys that was left over was just to secure the area. Being there 10 and a half months, you get short, you start to get scared and stuff like that, you make mistakes. Well, my mistake was to, after we were the last chopper out, so my mistake was that I put everybody on, I brought the chopper in, so I kind of showed that I was in the authority figure. And if there's any snipers left over, which there was, they're going to take that person out. So they took me out, and I was on as the last one that jumped up on the helicopter, got hit, pushed myself off the chopper, hit the ground lit up with all automatic fire, and I caught one in the arm, I caught one on the side, and one, at that time I didn't know, but one passed through around the rib cage, went through and hit my spine on the way out, and that was the beginning of my dealing with a disability. They had sent me to a field hospital and then sent me to Cameron Bay for recovery. I spent 2 weeks in a coma, came out of it in a field hospital before I went to Cameron. I think I spent 3 weeks in Cameron. I was sent to the Philippines. They operated on me in the Philippines again. They cleared up some situations in the back. Sent me to Japan. I spent 3 weeks in Japan at a, I want to say it was it was run by nuns, a hospital over in Japan run by nuns. Treated very well all the way through, all the nurses, doctors, and everything. A lot of care shown.
You've obviously, Jim, you have a good life and a beautiful family. After a situation that was tragic, and so what happened after what happened after that? I mean, you got out of the service.
Why I've fitted back into society?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The main reason was I came back and went through. It was a little easier for me than some people that were just 24 hours coming from a combat zone put back in the States. It was easier because they had to come from a real bad situation, try to adapt to a civilian situation. The mental switch, you can't do it overnight. A lot of young men couldn't handle it. They went to drugs, alcohol, got themselves in trouble. I was processed through being in a hospital atmosphere. I had to go through recovery. I had spent 2 years in a hospital bed trying to recover from my wounds. I had people that tended for me. Life came easier for me. Had a lot of wonderful people around me. I had a wonderful family waiting for me back home. I came from a family that my father was a country boy, my mother was Italian, and they devoted their whole life to their children. When I was brought up, we didn't have a whole lot, came from a small community. They offered us love, a secure home, and all these, we never had to go without, You know, we didn't have a lot of things, but we had enough. And the most important thing, knowing that we could depend on my parents. That was the thing that got me by, because when I came back, I had that support. I had my brother, I had a sister that supported me, that took me in. They got me out of the hospital atmosphere. The hospital atmosphere, I came back, I was shipped to Great Lakes. Wonderful medics, nurses at Great Lakes. Going to a VA, had wonderful people working at the VA for us. It made my change a lot better, a lot easier, you know.
When once you did get out of the service, then what did you do after that, Jim?
Well, okay, we had a family business back home. We ran a tavern and restaurant. So what I did, my job was to do the books, do the ordering, take care of the money, the banking, and then I ran, on the side, I ran a gun business. I sold and bought guns, and I was an outdoors person. So I spent a great deal of time trap shooting, hunting, stuff like that, fishing, you know, so.
And then you raised a family.
Got married late in life. Met my wife. She worked for the state of Illinois Job Service. After a couple of years of being married, my son came along, and between the responsibility of her and my son, he's into sports. You don't have much to do other than to just follow your son around and help your wife get through her job daily, you know. Yeah, I'm Mr. Ma here. Enjoy every part of it, because I go out the door and I look out and I've got 100-acre lake. I've got 5 acres here that I run my Labradors on, and I have my content moments in the morning with my coffee when there's no one around and no responsibility.
Do you you've maintained some contact with your friends from the service?
I have Greg Carey in New York, and Greg looked me up. He found me on the internet after a while, and we went through a leadership program, and I think we did basic or AIT together. I don't remember for sure. We hit it off when we were in the service. We buddied around a little bit. Some people you never forget. Some people make an impression on you. I don't know if it was his personality. I don't know if it was just his makeup or what. He's an impressive man. Johnny Cole, just complete opposite. He went through, in trade and everything else, a wonderful guy. Johnny was in Vietnam, one of the men that pulled me out after I got injured. He was in my squad. He's a fireman up in Vermont, and great family man. He's had his trials. He's came back, and one of his child has had a tumor on the brain, and we think maybe it was part of the situation that we dealt with over there with the Agent Orange or whatever. Great family, great wife. Has made contributed to changed his lifestyle over from where he could have been. He could have been one of the persons that fell aside, one of the GIs that fell aside, could have went to jail or got into drugs and alcohol. It's the only two. The other fellas, I never got affiliated with. I was affiliated with different veterans groups. Up in Illinois, I worked with a group called AMVETS, and I was associated with the member of the American Legion to VFW and stuff like that. And a good friend of mine, Marty Rue over there, which was in the cavalry too, and we went to school together and played sports. And we brought a $7.5 million veterans home program to our community, which benefits the community, not only the veterans. I got out of the veterans organizations after spending probably 15 years holding different offices and doing different things to benefit the community and the veterans. Got out of it, focused on my family, my sports, my outdoors, which I love, and I'm happy now. Okay.
Jim, the experience you had in the service, did it shape your perspective about the future and your life, and you know what I mean? Did that experience shape what you are, who you are today?
Well, when a young man goes into service, he usually goes in without any responsibility. So automatically, you're schooled, the responsibility is put in front of you. If you're going to make anything out of yourself, it's a good stepping stone. The bad thing about the service is that in case there is a war or something like that, and if you have any feelings for your family or country, you have to go put yourself out there. Okay, service is a great teaching stone for young people. It makes them responsible. I think I came out of it with responsibility. I think I came out of it with a sense of appreciating what life is really like, what we really have in this country. I've been in some countries, I've seen some real bad situations with how people live in other countries. The old saying, I know young people hear all the time, they don't really know what they have, but it's the truth. It's the truth. There's so many people in other countries suffering that. We do. If we have the opportunities given to us, if you're not lazy and you care about others and you care for yourself, you can grow. And most people that I'm affiliated with or I know have taken that step, made something out of themselves. Okay, and they haven't let their disabilities, they haven't let their service time, maybe many men that have been in a combat situation or in that facility could have any excuse in the world not to go ahead and do something with themselves. But I see many of them that that part of it I'm very proud of, the people that have come back and adapted and done something with themselves. I feel more proud of that than sometimes the part about me serving in Vietnam. Coming from a bad situation that they did and doing something with their life after and not using it as an excuse to be a failure.
Jim, you got a unique perspective about, having been in the service, having seen combat, having been wounded in combat. All of that, if we were to share a message to younger people today.
Share a message. There's so many messages that, I guess really appreciate if you appreciate your family, people love you, take time out to really find out what you want to do with life. If the military is part of what you want to do with life, go in there with your eyes open. There's many gains you can make in the military, there's many gains you can learn in the military, come back up. There's so many things today that, the United States offers young people.
My sense too, Jim, is that given that whole experience you went through, I don't sense bitterness.
Oh, I don't think I would have what I have if I had bitterness. I don't think anybody that has, you can't look back. What am I going to use? The wheelchair as an excuse to be a failure? Life is either make something out of yourself or you don't. It's kind of simple. You want to live with lies, and if you want to look back and live in the past. If you want to sit around and talk war stories, most people that talk war stories never experience anything. I haven't shared anything with you about the heartaches that I have lost, that I put behind me, about young men that's not here. I think there's, 65,000 men that didn't come back, 65,000 men that didn't come back from Vietnam? The numbers I don't know anymore, I got out of it. But, there's a lot of faces that I have forgotten that I couldn't forget for many years, okay? Thank God for my family, my kids, my love of nature. I've gone by that, the world's simple. You either make something of yourself or you don't,
Jim, I don't have any more questions.
Good.
Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just a little bit. I think the only thing I would like to add was that I think people like yourself, and I don't know completely what you're going to do with this, but if it benefits somebody, it benefits a young man, opens his eyes to something might help somebody down the line, it was worth talking to you this morning, okay? Because it's all about children. When we had the Gulf situation, you can ask my wife, I spent glued to the TV. I wanted to see things happen that didn't happen in Vietnam. Thank God for the generals and the people that ran it, it happened better, okay? That's it. It's been a pleasure.
Jim,
Appreciate you doing it.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.